The following is my NDE narrative, remembered to the best of my ability. The year was 2002. I was 23 years old and induced with my second child. I remember that this pregnancy was different from my first. For example, with my first pregnancy, there was a feeling in my body and my mind of awe, joy, surprise, wonder, and expectation. While I was definitely looking forward to eventually meeting my second child, I could sense something was significantly off with my body. In other words, I sensed an unnatural foreboding. I remember flinching each time I drove by my town's 2 funeral homes. It was an unshakable feeling, one I didn't have with my first child. I remember cleaning, nesting the house, and sometimes I would catch myself thinking, will this be the last time I clean the bathroom, etc. I have no idea why I thought those things, or what even brought them on. Only that my body and my spirit carried with them a general sense of malaise. These feelings lasted throughout my entire pregnancy. As with my first child, I was induced. My doctor was not a particularly good doctor. Perhaps at one time he had been, but he'd experienced a series of complex struggles in his life, which may have been what made him non-attentive and impatient. I was, at the time, without resources and on state insurance, so I really had no other medical care options. I remember begrudgingly going to the hospital for my scheduled induction. I remember trying to work toward natural labor, but the Pitocin was drastically increasing my contractions, making it nearly impossible to breathe. I eventually opted for an epidural. I remember asking one of the nurses, a woman from Ireland, if she had ever lost any patients to childbirth. She looked at me a bit surprised, stating, "No." As the night continued onward, my foreboding feelings increased. When I was dilated enough to push, the doctor arrived. I could immediately sense that he didn't want to be there. He even remarked to me that he had to leave his Christmas decorating so that he could deliver my baby. I also remember that I didn't have solid spatial awareness of my cervix, hips, and the like, indicating to me that I most likely had been given too much of an epidural. Even so, I pushed. I must have done that for a few hours. I was able to deliver a wonderfully healthy baby. But as I stated earlier, my doctor was impatient, and I could tell he was eager to return home. He began pulling on my placenta. He pulled so hard that he brought my uterus with it and inside out. What happened from there is a whirlwind of events. I remember my blood, convulsing out of my body at an alarming speed and quantity. I remember looking at my doctor's face and seeing absolutely no color. He looked terrified. I saw the staff ushering my family out of the room, quickly. The last familiar and loving face I saw was that of my baby being wheeled out of the room. I turned my head toward my doctor and asked if I was going to die. At least, this is what I remember. But unlike some of the other events, this memory is foggier. My doctor said yes, or something to that effect. Space and time, in that moment, ceased to exist. I began, without hesitation, to commune with a presence. It felt like the presence had always been with me, but I was just now realizing it. I bargained with the presence, but it was the most open and honest and transparent form of bargaining. I laid out my case with a faith that could move mountains. Nothing I said or transmitted via energy, because I don't remember the communication taking place via strictly words, was ever explicitly stated by the presence. Instead, it was a feeling, an assurance. I don't know how much time passed, but it must have been short before I began losing complete feeling in my body. It began in my toes and traveled upwards, but probably about halfway through losing bodily sensation, I experienced this overwhelming assurance, complete and total assurance. I knew, without being able to prove it, that I was going to make it through this ordeal. The doctors were literally running me down the hallway and toward emergency surgery and blood transfusions, but I was in a state of complete peace, like I've never before or after experienced. I remember trying to tell the doctors not to worry, that I was going to be okay, but they acted like they didn't hear me, and now I'm not sure that I ever verbalized anything at all. The last thing I remember is being with my mind, as my body had lost all sensation. It was almost as if the energy engaging with me was tucking me into a universal blanket. I saw no lights and I experienced no visions, but I was letting go into a dark, infinitely peaceful and loving embrace. The letting go was so loving that I simply succumbed to the darkness. The next thing I knew, It was like someone had forced my spirit back into my body. I was strapped to a hospital bed, intubated, and with no pain medication. I was told that my heart had stopped multiple times throughout the night and that I was too weak for pain meds. I suspect, even though I thought I was awake, I was not, and perhaps even outside of my body. Nobody else knew I was conscious. I cannot adequately recall how long it took for me to fully inhabit my body and alert the medical staff. What I do know is that I was grateful beyond measure to be back in the material realm so that I could raise my children. And, unlike most of the medical staff and my family, I was not surprised by my return. Thank you for tuning in to today's captivating video. Every story showcased on this channel is either graciously shared by our viewers or carefully curated from the rich archives of ians.org, unless specified otherwise. If you have a personal story you'd love to see featured, don't hesitate to reach out. You can find my email conveniently listed in the video description below. Looking forward to hearing from you.